When we think about flying a plane, it seems pretty simple, right? Push the stick forward to go down, pull it back to go up. But what if I told you that exact line of thinking is behind some of the deadliest accidents in aviation history? Today, we're diving into a core principle of flight that every single pilot has to master: managing the plane's energy budget. So let's just start with a big question. What do you think is the single deadliest mistake a pilot can make in that cockpit? Is it a sudden engine failure, flying into a massive storm? Well, the answer is probably not what you're thinking. It's not a dramatic Hollywood-style mechanical failure. The hard data shows that the most catastrophic errors come from a really simple but fatal conceptual mistake: just fundamentally misunderstanding the airplane's energy. And hey, this isn't just a theory. The FAA's own data on the top 3 causes of fatal accidents, things like losing control in midair, flying a perfectly good plane into the ground, and errors during landing, they all point back to one tragic common thread: mismanagement of the airplane's energy. So, to fly safely, a pilot has to stop thinking like a driver and start thinking more like an accountant, someone who's constantly managing the airplane's energy account. A plane that's up in the air is basically this living, breathing system of energy. It's always making deposits and withdrawals. A good pilot is like a sharp accountant, carefully managing this energy budget to make sure it's perfectly balanced for any situation that comes up. Okay, so the first type of currency in this account is something we all probably remember from high school physics: potential energy. It's just the energy that's stored in something because of how high up it is. For a pilot, this isn't some abstract concept. It's the number they're staring at on their altimeter. Potential energy is altitude. Simple as that. And the other half of this account, that's kinetic energy, the energy of motion. And again, for the pilot, this is super direct. Kinetic energy is the number they see on their airspeed indicator. It's just how fast they're cutting through the air. So let's just lock this in, because it's so important. An airplane's total stored energy is always a mix of these two things: its height and its speed, altitude and airspeed. They're like two sides of the exact same coin, and a pilot can always trade one for the other. So how do you make these deposits and withdrawals? Well, it's actually really straightforward. Deposits into this energy account come from the engine. That's your thrust. Think of it as your income. The withdrawals? That's aerodynamic drag, the constant friction of the air pushing back against the plane. Those are your expenses. Okay, so if a pilot's an energy accountant, what are their tools? Well, they've got 2 main controls to manage this whole system: the throttle and the elevator. And right here, this is where the big, dangerous misconception comes in. Most of us, and even some new pilots, think the elevator, the control yoke, is for up and down, and the throttle is for faster and slower. But when you look at it from an energy perspective, that's completely, dangerously wrong. The truth is actually way more elegant. The throttle, that's the master controller of your total energy. It decides if your overall bank account balance is going up or down by fighting against drag. The elevator, on the other hand, that's your distribution controller. It doesn't create any new energy. It just decides how you're going to spend the energy you already have, on more altitude or on more airspeed. The FAA has this absolutely brilliant analogy for this in their own handbook. Think of the airplane's total energy as a big reservoir of water. The throttle is the main inflow pipe, controlling how much water or energy is getting pumped into the system. So, when a pilot pushes that throttle forward, thrust becomes greater than drag. They're opening the inflow pipe, and the total amount of energy in that reservoir starts to rise. And when they pull the throttle back, drag starts winning, and the total energy level drops. It's as simple as that. Now, imagine that main reservoir feeds into 2 smaller tanks. One is labeled altitude, and the other is airspeed. The elevator is the valve that directs the flow between them. You pull back on the controls, you're sending energy into the altitude tank, but it's at the cost of the airspeed tank. You push forward, you do the exact opposite. Okay, so we've got the theory. Throttle controls the total amount of energy, and the elevator decides how to spend it. This leads to a really simple set of rules that pilots use to coordinate their controls perfectly. Let's break it down. Rule 1. To gain energy, you want to climb or speed up, you add throttle first. You add the energy, then you use the elevator to decide where it goes. Rule 2. To lose energy, descending or slowing down, you reduce the throttle first. Then you use the elevator to manage that loss. And rule 3, to just trade energy, like diving to gain speed, you move the elevator first, because you're only redistributing the energy you already have. So let's put this all to the test. We're going to look at two pretty intense life or death scenarios where managing this energy budget is the only thing standing between a safe outcome and a total disaster. Okay, imagine this. You're the pilot. You're on final approach to land. The runway is right there in front of you, but you notice you're a little bit too low and your airspeed is starting to drop. Your gut reaction, your instinct might be to just pull back on the controls to lift the nose. But is that the right move? This little energy matrix tells us the whole story. Look at the bottom left box. Lower and slower. What's the diagnosis? Total energy very low. You see, you don't have a distribution problem. You have an income problem. Your energy account is almost empty. Pulling back on the yoke would be like trying to pay your rent by just rearranging the few pennies you have in your pocket. The only correct first move is to add throttle, to make a deposit into that energy account, and fast. Now for an even more terrifying scenario, and this one is based on real accidents. You've taken off from a high-altitude airport, say somewhere in the mountains. There's a mountain ridge ahead. The plane's climbing, but then it just stops. The engine is at full power, but you're not gaining any more altitude. Your instinct is screaming at you, pull back, get the nose up. But as you do it, the plane actually starts to sink. What is happening? The pilot has gotten into a really dangerous state called the backside of the power curve. In this situation, pulling the nose up creates so much drag that even the full power engine can't overcome it. The only way out is terrifying, and it's completely counterintuitive. You have to push the nose down. You trade that precious altitude for airspeed. This reduces the drag, lets the plane fly efficiently again, and then it has the energy to climb. Sometimes you have to go down to go up. And all of this, every rule, every scenario, it all distills down to one powerful mantra that governs safe flight. It's not pitch for altitude, power for speed. It's pitch plus power controls energy state. You are always coordinating those two controls to manage your total energy and how it's distributed. And that leaves us with a final thought. This mental model of managing a finite budget, of balancing what comes in, what goes out, and how you allocate what you've got, it's an incredibly powerful tool. It's the secret to flying a plane safely through the sky. But it kind of makes you wonder, where else in your life are you managing a complex energy system just like this? Maybe without even realizing it.